I think like I've only seen menstruation related media of like, oh, you haven't gotten your period, that means you're pregnant. Like just it's just like weird, like they make it very dramatic.
In the sense of males in like general media, they can use it as something against women or that define women, and I feel like that just makes you feel like you're being defined by your period, and that's not who you are.
PMS is something that actually makes me a little bit angry. I learned it through popular media, actually. So no teacher in sex ed ever told me about PMS. My parents never told me about PMS. PMS is a syndrome that we have scapegoated as a way to explain why we feel distressed when we're on our periods. But I also feel that when you're on your period, you feel distressed, but I don't think that you're actually less competent and less cognitively capable compared to your peers who are not menstruating or your peers who don't menstruate.
Especially among like kids shows and like Disney movies, like where like whenever there's like a female lead character that's featured, like menstruation is like definitely not seen as like part of like the daily like task that she has to like handle. It's just like completely like not there. Like it's not something like, it's seen more as like a problem that's like dealt with behind closed doors, and something that like shouldn't be talked about.
In terms of other forms of how we market periods, we first and foremost, we market it as something that only happens to people who identify as women, as opposed to people who also identify as male. That results in a lot of problems within LGBTQ plus identity, where we see that people don't feel comfortable because they don't see themselves, and they think that therefore their problem is invalid because there's a lack of seeing people who might not be women but still have periods represented. I then think also that and that is something very connected to the fact that commercials for things like pads and tampons are so hyper feminine and don't ever discuss the fact that having your period can be painful, or having it could just be a normal part of your life that you have to deal with, as opposed to this thing that's so beautiful and so feminine. And so even just looking at the way pads and tampons are marketed, there's so much cursive on boxes, and there's so much pink, purple, light blue that's meant to kind of seem not very aggressive and very passive. And so I think because of that, there's such a connotation around period marketing that it has to be this hyper feminine thing, and it has to look so graceful and so beautiful, that's so far from reality that it makes people feel even more distant when they're having their period.
It's super interesting looking at advertising relating to menstrual products over the years. The product manufacturers were really marketing white women, usually of upper class, apparently upper class, as clean because they use products, therefore making a silent argument that people of color are not clean, don't use the products. And this thread has been carried forward for quite a long time. So I think the media has portrayed this idea that one, you need products. You can't use some other home remedies that may work well and don't pollute the environment and don't cost money. And two, you need to use products to be clean, and the standard of clean is whiteness. For anyone who wasn't getting education at school or education from home, they certainly weren't going to find it in the media, because the media was giving a very antiseptic view of menstruation.
But I also think that a lot of movements like the period movement and other menstrual equity movements have really utilized the expansion of the internet and social media to their advantage, because that's really where they reach their target group of, younger females and other menstruating people, and really get them to understand that they shouldn't accept this as the status quo, that there is a lot of work that needs to be done. So it's definitely helped a lot of movements expand.